This conference will now be recorded.
Oh, I have remarks to give. And I can talk about it. For those of you who I don't know as well, my name is Paul Ferguson. I am the clerk of the circuit court, and that has it's a job that has a wide variety of tasks. Some of them are more interesting than others. So if I wanted to put the audience to sleep, I could probably just go through all the things that a clerk of the circuit court does. But the main ones that are relevant for most people are if you come in for jury duty. Steve and Kim said that's the last time they saw me. We facilitate that process. We have the land records. So if you're buying or selling a property, or if you refinance a property, it all goes through there. Or if you want to look up who lives where, that people come to our office for that. And you can also do historical research. There's a lot of property transactions that happened many years ago. Yeah, yes, Paul.
Are you the office that keeps track of much the properties from software?
No, that's a real estate assessment, but it's really easy to find. It's just sort of, if they're on, we just stick to that website. Here's the click.
That's public information.
Yes, with the except, there's you could get a order from the circuit court judge, see if there was some sort of reason. There's a statute that gives a few people limited,
like former presidents, Obama. No, but
by a
Is it
judge.
just who owns it? Like you couldn't find a renter, like who's
That,
on the
that's
deed?
it's just who owns the property. Yeah, so owner could rent it, and there's been somewhat in the news. There was a New York Times article about Stephen Miller and his living in Arlington, and he's now moved to Quantico military housing. Maybe it's Fort Myers. Okay, excuse me. Yeah.
still in one of these.
So, but people found out where he lived, and I don't think that it was criminal, but he was
annoying.
uncomfortable. Let's just say, and that's yeah. Yeah, Barbara Wine. Yeah, she's gone through, but she hasn't been charged criminally. But this will help her that there's a different attorney general. And you're talking about what Jay Jones means is the attorney, and I hate to call it a name, but the lawyer for the attorney general was our former Commonwealth attorney Theo Stamos. So yes, the Barbara Wine will not have to go through as much, I'm sure, based on the court ruling. So you guys feel free to eat. Bob says it's a little bit noisy when the food comes, but that doesn't bother me, and it probably won't bother many of you either. The other thing that people into our office is probate. If you're the executor of our estate, you also can file your will with us. And the advantage of doing that is that you forget to tell everybody where your will is. That's one of the first places that someone might look. They might look at the courthouse to see if you filed it there. Yes, with the will. Yeah, you just file the power of attorney. Yeah. So you can file it with our office. Usually people file it as part of the will, but and then the trust is oftentimes through the land records having to do with the property. But if you have a trust as part of your will, you could file it.
Trust doesn't have any property in it.
Okay, well, you could yes, you could file it as part of your. Some of the things that you wouldn't necessarily come into our office for that we do a lot of is marriage licenses. Not to say that seniors couldn't get married again. My grandmother was married 4 times and twice after the age of 83. She died at 95. So we also, we sort of have discretion to not grant a marriage license, and we can just say we suspect fraud, we could be sued. But if you see somebody, a 90-year-old woman coming in with a 35-year-old guy, you kind of are a little suspicious. And you say, are you sure? And you ask some questions of that. Unfortunately, we had Russell Vogt come in for a marriage license the other day. Yeah. So, no, but apparently he had been divorced recently, also in the Arlington court, and that's also something you can do in our court. Another thing, I was having a meeting with the Republican clerk from Loudoun County, and he was bemoaning that he lost his Republican delegate Higgins, the last Republican, and he said, Paul, the Democrat was disingenuous. He ran blaming Delegate Higgins for all the data centers, and that's done by the local government. And I said, well, possibly Delegate Higgins took some money from the and he says, well, maybe, but then I would say that. I said, well, let me tell you about my first election, and I always feel a little guilty about this. Is my opponent, if you can believe it or not, it was for the, yeah, I'll wait for him to, sir.
Nope, from your first election, it sounds like confession.
Yes. Okay, so there was a pause. Well, no, yes, my first election was for the Arlington County Board. It was in 1995. And I know that Bob Platt was an active supporter of mine. And Steve, were you around then helping me, Steve?
We're just going back to grad school.
Okay, so no, so Bob's the only one that's
been around
there for my first campaign. I was 30 years old, and at the time, that was the youngest county board member, but clearly Maureen Coffey shattered that small record that I had. So Katie was very, very strategically, because when you're that age, people say you're too young, and Katie pointed out that she was a couple months older than I was when I ran, that she didn't want that title, which was pretty smart of her to have sort of navigated it that way. That is true, and we can talk about that too, as far as my service. I have to, during my years on the county board, which were from 1996 to 2007, I served with Ellen Bosman for 2 years, the first 2 years, and then for my last 10 years, I served with Barbara Pavola. But they were the only female on the board during those years, and I'm reading a Malcolm Gladwell book now, Revenge of the Tipping Point, where it just says how it's hard for, for instance, if you don't have critical mass, which really is 1/3, hard for maybe somebody who is a minority, and you can consider engender a minority in that situation. But I promised to tell a quick story of why I felt guilty, because he was saying, well, this person got elected by running against the data centers. Well, the first year of the concealed handgun permit law was 1995. So when we did polling, that was the #1 issue Arlingtonians were concerned about. And my opponent was a Republican, Ben Winslow. That's how old I am. And I'm a senior too. I'm 60. So I put myself in that. Arlington's definition of senior is 55. So I've long past that. So there was this concealed weapons law is done by the state, not by the local government, but the local government's affected by it. So the county board, without me, but the 4 Democrats on the county board, had a resolution opposing this, opposing the legislation when it was coming, and then opposing it, saying we will continue to be opposed, that we don't think that this is a good idea. And my opponent, Ben Winslow, voted against him because he was he still had the base Republican Party, or maybe he truly believed that it was a good idea. So we hammered him in the election on that. I mean, so he would get so mad at debates. He goes, people come up to me and they go, "Why are you for guns?" I'm not for guns, I'm for, and so it was, I felt a little bad. And when people would ask me, well, why was that one of my top issues? I said, it affects Arlingtonians. And sort of as a county board member, part of what we do is we tell the legislature what we would like to see. And I'll be telling the legislature I would like to see that amendment. So as my penance for that, I have to sign every concealed weapons permit that is in Arlington County. So once I became clerk, I had to sign them all. Just 2 years ago, my staff was able to figure out how I could do this digitally. So I didn't have to do hundreds of them at a time.
So you
And
did auto.
it's not auto pen, but it's, they have my signature, and it is digital.
It's actually Thomas Jefferson that created the first mechanical. Somebody's not meeting from.
Well, yeah, I don't know if at least we know they're there. That's good.
Okay. There you go.
Okay, great. Well, anyway,
So that's your penance, is that? Well, but you're gonna get it automated.
Well, it is automated. So that was my penance for my first 15 years of the job. This is I'm now in completing year 18. Oh yeah. There was we would have a couple thousand a year. So, and that's compared. But we have a relatively low percentage of our population that has concealed weapons. For instance, I hate to generalize, but the rule is you're eligible at 21. You see a lot of 21-year-old young men just say, "Oh, this would be cool. I'll get this," like whether they need it or use it or not. And then I think it's also important for all of us as Democrats to try to understand where the other side is coming from, and to see where are issues that we can meet them halfway. And certainly, given that we have supermajority in the House of Delegates, we have a majority in the state Senate, and we have a Democratic governor, you could potentially see something like this repealed. But I think over time, most Democrats have come to the acceptance that, this having a concealed handgun permit is not the worst thing in the world, because the law basically allows people to have a gun without a concealed handguns permit. So at least with the concealed handgun permit, people are doing training, people are registering, and the Republican argument that most of the people that are committing crimes don't take the trouble to get a concealed handgun permit. They just have a gun. So there may be some amending, and certainly Barbara Favola has been successful in getting legislation through that says that if you're convicted of a violent crime, any felony offense, you cannot have a gun. And if you're convicted of any domestic violence assault, then you cannot own a handgun. And Barbara's trying to get that extended to somebody that maybe they were just dating and they didn't get married, so that person also could not get a gun. Whereas right now they would be able to. So
you have to have a specific reason for getting a permit.
You don't.
Can you just
anyone? Yeah, anyone can get a permit, but you could carry a gun. The concealed handgun permit allows you to keep it in your pocket rather than just displaying it out in the open. So I don't think it's the worst law in the world if you come to the acceptance that people do have a legal right to have a gun, where we'd like to see that restricted. I mean, so I'm sure you're going to see some gun restriction out of this General Assembly and this governor. I would at least hope that things like the gun show loopholes and semi-automatics. That before I take Steve, I just have a quick anecdote, is that my sons now are 27 or 24. And when we've had these massive attacks, my younger son said to me one time, 14 or 15. He goes, Dad, you know, if they could just make it so that you couldn't have like a machine gun, he said there would still be a lot of people that would get killed, but it'd be a lot less. Wouldn't that be a good idea? Yeah, they did have a assault weapons ban, and it expired, and then it now can't get passed through. But just common sense, yeah.
I didn't know if you had a particular agenda, but before you go, I'm hoping you might touch on the cannabis. You know, it's legal to have cannabis in the state now, but you can't buy it in because they haven't set up the equivalent of the ABC stores.
Yeah,
Do you think that's going to happen?
absolutely, and I see
Store.
there is, but
I guess.
yeah. I don't know if you need prescriptions to go in there. I haven't walked in there, so I should know more of it. But I think you're going to see that done on a much more orderly scale, and you'll see.
I didn't know that was. I knew it was available in America. I didn't know there was any.
Well, I think there's restrictions. I'm not just sure anyone can go.
Really cannabis, or just
But short answer to your question is that I'm sure will be addressed, but that's a state issue and one I'm not. Well, that's the other side of this coin is that once now that really it's only become a civil penalty, our police have gotten complaints from people that have, you know, that you're outside an apartment building and you've got people, in addition to smoking a cigarette, they're smoking marijuana, and it's a civil penalty right now. You can't just fire up a joint.
But driving under the influence.
Oh,
Driving under the influence certainly is illegal. If harder to prove than the driving under the influence of alcohol.
The agriculture machine. Farmers were sort of set up to go with that, and then the new governor came in. Shut down and made the
started it for 4 years.
testing
When it happened.
untenable. Anyway, I'm just saying that other parts of the state are interested in this from a different angle. Okay.
Well, Steve, you talked about agenda. I try to keep whatever I talk about fluid, and want to make sure I'm discussing what other people want to discuss. I have lots of stories I can tell also, but
Many of them about Bob.
no, Bob's been a just incredible volunteer over the years, doing basically whatever needs to be done, from your absentee ballot project that you continually work on to parliamentarian, sergeant at arms. You've done so many jobs within the party, Bob, and precinct captain being one of the most important. That's how we met.
I've got the type because I became precinct captain while you were in charge of precinct ops, and I've retained that office ever since. I'm the
Longest serving precinct captain. That is awesome. That is great. That is a great. As far as giving I sort of started with my first election, but I was the precinct operations chair of the party from 1992 to 1994, and it was. And back then we didn't have a deputy chair, so the precinct ops person was the deputy chair, and that's interesting because we have a contested election for party chair right now coming up. And I really feel that being party chair isn't necessarily conducive to helping you that much with elected office. The 1 month that the party chair was out of town, I took more hits. There was a strange set of circumstances, is that it was 1994, and briefly Doug Wilder was running in a primary against Chuck Robb for United States Senate. And this is where Chuck Robb narrowly defeated Olive North. And he only won because Senator John Warner recruited a Republican alternative candidate, J. Marshall Coleman, to run as an independent that got 7% of the vote. But if Doug Wilder had stayed in the race, probably we wouldn't have won that. And so Doug Wilder was first running as a Democrat, and then he was running as an independent. So since he was running as an independent, and I was for that month in charge of the Democratic Party, anybody that was for Doug Wilder, I had to quietly say, look, you need to, I was like, if there was a primary, I would have voted for Wilder over Rob. So I like Wilder. I get why you like him, but you need to resign from the committee because we have a Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate, and Governor Wilder is not, and so he's an independent, and there was 3 people I remember that they were African American, and they said no, we're not leaving the committee, and I had to institute proceedings to throw them off of the committee for this election. And I didn't get very good press on that. So, I was like, yeah, this whole party chair thing, I don't, it's not conducive. And so it's much different when you're representing yourself personally in your views, or you're representing party politics and the structure of that. Before the precinct ops, I was a precinct captain myself. I grew up in this neighborhood in Farrington. I was a precinct captain from both Abingdon and Fairlington, and went to Wakefield High School, and was very active on the alumni board for Wakefield High School. I represent the entire county, so I shouldn't say anything negative about W&L or Washington Liberty or Yorktown, but we in the Wakefield Alumni Association give out more scholarship money than W&L and Yorktown combined. And we're always considered the school that was sort of a little less resources. So I'm very, very, very proud of that, and very proud of our alumni network that is so generous with. We've given out over $4.5 million of scholarships.
It's needed first. So it's great.
When they
For when they attend college. Yes. These are college scholarships that we $20,000 scholarships, $150,000 that we apply every year. So anyway, I wanted to Steve had a question. I wanted to take questions from you, and I can also steer the discussion with other things. So I wanted to see if there was anything on any of your minds.
Why don't you talk to us about rule of law,
Very soft, please.
and that?
Rule of law and grand juries. Well, what happens is people get arrested for an alleged crime, and then the Commonwealth attorney either brings that case before a citizen group of grand jurors, and that's a group between 5 and 7, and there's a low bar because you're not deciding guilt or innocence. You're just deciding, is there enough evidence to go forward to the trial? And so the Commonwealth attorney, brings those cases before the citizen group, and there's usually between 35 and maybe sometimes as much as 65 each month of cases. And the cases can get resolved before trial. There can be a agreement between the Commonwealth attorney and either the defense attorney or the person representing themselves. It does. It happens the large majority of the time. Then it could be that the Commonwealth attorney bypasses that grand jury process and does what's called a direct indictment, but they usually do it through the grand jury process.
5 and 7.
It is between 5 and 7. It can be either 5, 6, or 7. They also, well, that's an interesting question. The code says that you're supposed to be upstanding known members of the community. So that used to mean that I had a lot of Democrats on that, because the judges are the ones that did the selection. But from the judges would sort of run out of their personal list of people they could do. So they asked me, can you find people? And they would be the ones signed off on it, but it was through recommendations that usually I was making. And so they decided that they had enough of that, and they Fairfax and Alexandria have a system where it's just random jurors that are used for that, rather than people that are known in the community. And then there's a background check done on them to determine that there's no criminal record. The judge does some questioning of the people, making sure that the judges feel comfortable that they're good members of the community, and we take it from there. So now you have the same chance of being selected for a grand jury as you do for a regular juror. Well, it's a lot less of a chance of being selected for grand jury because we only have 120 of those a year. So
federal is a lot larger than the grand jury.
well, yes, a federal jury service is longer. We only bring you in for consideration of the day's trials if you're coming in for regular jury duty. So there could be 3 jury trials on that day, and you could be considered for, one or more of them. But
I'm talking about the size of the grand jury.
well, there's special grand juries where there's a particular case that the prosecutor wants investigated, and that's the same on the federal level, and that can be between 9 and 11 people. So I don't know the answer to the question of our grand juries larger on the federal end.
I've been listening to some of these law things like, how they're getting distribution people like Comey through, how much difficulty they're having with that.
Yeah.
Like in the district.
Right.
Which is kind of both a federal and a state. It's
Right.
kind of a mixed system.
Well, the sandwich guy that threw a sandwich at the officer, he was, the grand jury did not indict him on a felony charge, so they did a direct indictment on a misdemeanor charge.
But the thing that surprised me when I served on the grand jury, the 30% case.
It's just a police officer.
They just had, we staked out this parking lot, and this guy came and burgled the car, and he sort of told the story.
So there wasn't much of a case made by the prosecutor.
The prosecutor wasn't in the room. It was just the policeman telling us his story of why they were going after this particular person.
Thank you.
And that's sort of
great.
In some of the recent cases involving the Eastern District of Virginia, the interim U.S. attorney ended up personally presenting the cases. So but the important thing is that the grand jury is a important barrier to a individual
Unjust prosecution, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not much of a barrier. It's some, but not.
Yeah, you indict a hand sandwich, but you can't indict somebody for Oregon.
Right.
Is the new.
So I wanted to take questions from all of you. If not, I have some questions for that I can ask of you guys. That's sort of going on politically. Is there anything?
There's a threat.
Well, I wanted to ask all of you if you thought Senator Kane had the right vote or Senator Warner had the right vote.
I actually thought about sending an email to Kane's office saying, you may think I won't forget this, but I won't.
But anyway,
I had the opposite. I see there was a lot of real suffering.
Yeah.
That was bad and gonna get worse. And I feel like that's what motivated Kane. I mean, here in our state, people are going to miss 2 paychecks.
Yeah.
And, I don't care if people missing the vacation flight, but I care about the agency staff that are watching what, this jerking people back and forth about SNAP. I mean, I feel like that's why you did it. And I'm not really opposed to that.
I think we have to give some time to see what happens like in a month when all those insurance rates hit the most people out in this country. And then they have a vote to then continue to that's in December. That thing is only through January, so it's
January 30th, right? It's a.
on this, I think can't say today, yeah. We'll see what happens.
They take it.
They've come out with their effective
But-
December 31st. So
Not everybody is, what's the deadline? December 15th or something? So a lot of people haven't even started that process.
I just think
Wait,
it's the wrong time.
Maybe they could have gotten away with another week of putting pressure. That was my view.
it seemed like we were
I wouldn't have
winning. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
a thing.
I would have waited until Thanksgiving, that would have been a crisis, but they could have given it another week, let the pressure build on the recovery.
Well, that's one of the problems was that more and more of the air traffic controllers were
Sure,
walking out.
that's what stopped it last time.
I had a friend that told me he was going to the airport and this Uber driver, he told him that he was an air traffic controller, but he was calling in sick to try to get money by driving. So
It's like multi-layered test, this level, and, you know, hold out, go, you know, suffer, blah, 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 but at the lower level, real people, I think, are suffering. And I had a lot of heartburn with that.
Yeah, the Virginia, borough, employee, I think that made Kane.
Yeah.
That's a Virginia
Yeah, so many.
representative. Thinking of,
The SNAP thing's just
Yeah.
crazy.
well,
It's crazy going to the Supreme Court to get permission to not pay people. I know, and I think that's still,
go to the Supreme Court so you can start just.
it just, I'm getting, you know, it's just. So I think, and then I'd also read that, it's something to do with like, who was up for reelection, and so
Yeah.
they strategically pick people. I don't feel like he went totally against the Democrat Party. I think this is a strategy.
Given who it was, none of them are elected.
Right. Yeah, so they kind of
So
took,
that-
they took the hit for the thing.
Schumer,
I don't like, I mean, I'm
Right.
not exactly, I mean,
It was
I'm
an
glad I
impossible.
didn't, because it would have been hard. But
So what do you think?
I didn't want to bias the discussion. I should also say about disclosure, I consider myself a pretty good friend of Tim Kane's. He was the mayor of Richmond when I was on the county board, so I got to know him in his local government days. So I think that I'm really glad that they did what they did, and I can explain why.
when they did,
That
Why?
when they did it and now. Okay, because, you know, to quote Barack Obama, when the Republicans shut down the government, he said, just because you disagree with my policies doesn't mean you could shut down the government. But the answer was, we were desperate. I mean, we are facing just something that's an existential crisis with President Trump. So something had to be done. You could make a good argument that the government needed to be shut down because we just couldn't guarantee that he wouldn't do rescissions or things that.
destroy the filibuster, do you think that was part of it?
Well, keep in mind that if Dems take control of the Senate, that there's going to be a lot of pressure on them to end the filibuster. That's something that we've been talking about as
Newsom?
a party for a while, but anyway, we'll see if there's a support for that. But I think that it was brilliant to isolate this healthcare issue for a couple of reasons. One, it was something that Democrats could agree on. It's hard for us as a party to be all together, but we all agree that it's wrong for people's premiums to go up. So that if we hadn't shut down the government, we would have gotten no attention to that. So
Yeah.
people said, well, they didn't get anything, but no, people know now that Democrats are for giving people affordable health care and Republicans are not.
And food and.
And the food stamps, we know
jobs.
that Trump was not for people giving people
Right.
their SNAP benefits even when he could. So we really did differentiate. The government was closed for a record period of time. If there was a plane crash because of the FAA not being staffed, it wouldn't be just Trump and the Republicans. We would have to take some of the responsibility for that. And so just from an intellectual point of view, we shut down the government because we disagreed with their policies. So turn it around, let's say Republicans, when they're in the minority, say, you know, we're not going to fund the government unless Democrats come out against all trans rights or something, you know, something that something we can't do. We'd say, you know, just because you disagree with our policies doesn't mean you can. The government has to be open as the general rule. So to have gone, Steve, you talked about another week, and sure, another week would have been fine, but the Republicans were not going to get anything in another week. And
But I mean, more pressure would have been put on them, more evidence that they were the ones obstructing it. That's what I think.
what they got in return was significant, in my opinion, because the Republicans defunded the Government Accountability and Watchdog Office, and there was an agreement to fund that, so that at least I know that the suits against Trump take time and they've had mixed results as best, but that allows that to take place. They got a commitment on a vote for this, so. Okay, but Paul, let me. But let me tell you this. I mean, I would say that this is a win. Yeah, but let me just say, okay, so this is a win-win. If the Republicans do not, they go back on their word, then we can hammer them more on that. If the Republicans, then I would say that the best thing that could happen from a policy point of view is that enough Republicans agree and it's funded. But I'm sure that's somewhat unlikely. So the best thing politically for us is if Republicans vote this down, because then it's more of an issue. So it allows us to we've made our point. We've shut down the government. But people, you know, can't go. I personally, I have a good salary. I couldn't have gone on my last two paychecks. I would have had to, you know, borrow some from my retirement account. I would have had to done some things.
So the optics of coming into the holidays, you know, when families had no income coming into be on vacation.
My youngest son's working in Chicago and he's coming home for Thanksgiving. And I tried to tell him, I don't want you coming home if there's government shutdown. He's 24-year-old. He didn't listen to me when he was a teenager. He's not going to listen to me at 24. He's like, Dad, it'll work out. Everyone's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm like, you know, it could be really bad. So, I mean, that he's the type of person that government is just supposed to take care of and it's supposed to work for, and it's not.
I think the optics are so bad, and I really hope that the Democrat Party plays up that. The optics of building a gilded ballroom while people are standing outside the place in line to get their food bank. I mean, that's incredible optics for this country. And I really, really, really hope that the royal we can get our act together and make sure people understand that that's what's going on.
We have to start with the premise that the government should be open.
Right.
And as Democrats, and the fact that we were willing to shut it down for a record period of time was a real statement on what we of desperation, that we thought things were so bad in government that we had to do that. But that continuing that has risk, and what they got in return, I feel is significant. And so Democrats who are saying, well, we won't get the healthcare premiums restored. Well, I'm not sure that I don't see any way the Republicans could have just said, you know, you're right.
No,
we're gonna give you those healthcare premiums and we're gonna reopen the government. They couldn't do that. They couldn't face their electorate and do that. So,
you know, the little silver lining might be the fact that the House is coming back. The Epstein petition is going to yeah. So fund the petition and they have to have a vote.
I can see her.
Arizona congressman,
Yeah. That will be another point of pressure, you know. Why don't you want this, the worst molester of children, you know, lifetime to be exposed?
I understand, Steve was saying, over here, Steve was saying that it makes him mad that we're giving in or that we're not fighting. And I understand that, but I think that this was, if you start with the premise that government has to be reopened and that there's consequences and that we as the Democratic Party are the ones that more care about those consequences than the Republicans.
I think it laid bare the cruelty of the GOP and I hope people saw that, and I think it's on us to make sure they saw that, they did, because unbelievable.
One of Paul Krugman's Substack missives was titled "The Cruelty is the Point."
Yeah, so I'm glad that it happened, and I sort of liken it. My analogy of it is that it's a little like we went to Vegas and we didn't win big, but we got a little bit of a gain. And if we kept our chips on the table, it could turn into a loss. I see that happening, and so we took our chips off the table, we took our gain, and we keep fighting, and we keep using what we gained to advance and leverage. And really, it's not about healthcare, even though we were saying it's about 2026 elections. I mean, that's as far as fighting for survivalship of our government and our party, that's what we're fighting for.
This isn't enough to make me say I'll never vote for Tim Kaine again, but it is. I mean, I think everything you said makes sense, but I also think they didn't get one thing more than well, that's not true. There were three appropriations bills that were included. And food stamps is funded now till September, so that's also true. It's not done yet. And the one has to.
But at this point, if they don't, it's on the Republicans. It's not us anymore. It's on them. Because we can say, we propose compromise. Well, I'm naive. I don't know. I don't know anything. Because the feeling that I don't think Kaine just went off on his own. I think it was part of the discussion. And he's like, I don't say my age.
As the highest intellect, and I can guarantee you that he's been agonizing and thinking this through. And so, Paula, you were saying you were glad you didn't have to vote. I mean, if he was here with us, I'd say, "Oh, this is a slam dunk. I wanted to reopen." He probably lost sleep over it. I'm sure he went over the pluses and minuses a lot.
Well, there wasn't this is these
Yeah, Chuck Schumer.
we can do it.
Chuck Schumer in danger.
Well, sure, he's in danger because people are mad and they're frustrated and they want.
But
Yeah, maybe it's just.
well, again, that's one point I'm talking about. Wait a month to see what comes of this, because it may be the worst move, it may be a brilliant move, depends on.
Yeah.
But
The other thing I think it's very important to remember is that Arlington is not typical of Virginia as a whole.
No kidding.
That's true.
And Warner have done a very good job of formulating the overall solution that, you know,
Carry the day.
carry the day,
Right.
Southwest Virginia. And we have
I
had,
have to have that.
we have had candidates that even, and it's all, there were years when people like John Warner represented Virginia instead of Mark Warner. And so we have to make allowances for that. I think people forget that. You know, that his job is to sort of figure out where the center point is in Virginia. Has to be enough in the middle to get reelected.
Has Bamberger met us on their position on this, or did she kind of stay out of it? Yeah.
I do think she did a job, you know, as you were saying, Mona, I think Abigail Thunberger did a very good job not taking the bait to go more liberal, even though many of us would have loved hearing it, but not.
Or not making it forceful against Trump, which allowed those who had been deceived by him a year ago to say, this guy lied to me. And now I'm gonna go back. We got, what, 13 minutes?
They,
Delegates, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
For all of the turnovers, but
Now, Diamond's whole transition team is women out here, so. It's not bad.
Said, well, let's wait a month and see what happens. But what I'm saying is
Yeah.
we put ourselves, I think, in a win-win situation because
Yeah.
if we gain the healthcare, that's something that Democrats did. If we don't, which is more likely, then we've got to vote. And then
That's gonna last
Republicans,
all year.
then the Republicans we're running against, and the only way we get the Senate majority is long shot states like Iowa and Ohio. When those Republican senators vote against it, we hammer them. Although, is Joni Ernst not for re-election, and I would say that's an open seat, but you know what I'm saying? We run against the Republican Party. So and really, Ossoff is right.
Yeah.
So really, to me, of the two, and this is I should be recorded. I mean, I'm more of the I almost hope it doesn't pass because I
The issue.
I think it's a great issue, and what
I'm across the board.
I'm concerned. I would like to see people have affordable health care right now, but I'm more concerned with the 2026 elections.
Yeah.
And that they
Let's see here. I don't know. How did I get all messed up? Meeting dial and using.